Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to give it a second while people log in. Good morning, good morning. Just giving it a moment as people join us. In the meantime, I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Can people see that? Let me see. All right. So, pardon me one second. All right. So good morning, everybody. Before I begin, could I have some confirmation in the chat that you are seeing my presentation screen? Oh, the chat is disabled. There we go. It enabled it. But thank you for letting me know. I'm seeing them in the Q&A that you can see. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jimena Perez Vizcasillas. I am the outreach coordinator for the Long Island Sound Study National Estuary Program, and I am an extension associate with New York Sea Grants. This webinar is meant for potential bidders interested in the EJ needs assessment for Long Island Sound. And I will tell you off the bat that I am recovering from COVID. So if I have to pause for a second, I do appreciate your patience. So in today's agenda, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to provide a bit of context and background on who we are as programs, what New York Sea Grant is, what Long Island Sound Study is, and how we operate. To give a bit of context for this project, I'm going to talk a little bit about the environmental justice work group within this program, and then I'm going to go over the EJ needs assessment overview, the application process, and we'll have some time for questions. This is not meant to be an in-depth overview of the EJ needs assessment. That's what the RFP is for. But I'm happy to answer any questions. All right, so to begin, as I said, I'm an extension associate with New York Sea Grant. New York Sea Grant is part of the greater National Sea Grant College Program Network. It exists basically, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting messages. I apologize. It exists pretty much everywhere in all states with a coast, including the Great Lakes. And right now there's 34 colleges across the US and its territories that are part of this college program. And I'm so sorry, I'm seeing things in my screen and I don't know if I'm losing you. Okay, I hope you can all see. So basically, the mission behind Sea Grant is to enhance the practical use and conservation of coastal marine and Great Lakes resources in order to create a sustainable economy and environment. And the way that we do that is through three approaches, basically through funding, mostly funding of research, marine and coastal research, extension and education, which basically means getting that science out there to whoever needs to hear it. And so you'll see there we have a map of New York, and where those stars are where my colleagues and I are spread all over the state. What you're seeing here is the education and extension folks, meaning that these are the people who go out there and work with the public to get that science out there. And I am located right here in Stony Brook. So this slide is a little bit old, but I like using it when I'm explaining what Sea Grant is and how we operate. Because Sea Grant Extension, what we do is this piece of connecting with communities. Again, it's about connecting communities with science. And this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of specialists that we have in our office and the kinds of topics that we tackle. We have a seafood safety specialist, we have coastal resilience and flooding, we have marine fisheries, coastal processes and erosion, and outreach and community engagement as well. So just to bottom line it, we are the outreach and extension portion of environmental management and conservation, I would say. All right, so I mentioned that I am in Stony Brook. I specifically work with the Long Island Sound Estuary, which is that big body of water right here between Connecticut and Long Island. The Long Island Sound Estuary is more than 4 million people live in coastal communities around it, and more than 23 million people live within 50 miles of it. It's estimated to contribute about $9.4 billion annually to the economy via, tourism. We have ferries going back and forth between Connecticut and New York. We have tankers, and not to mention all of the ecosystem services that this estuary provides. It's considered a natural nursery. We have over 1,200 species of invertebrates. It's a stopover site for many migratory birds. So estuaries in general are very valuable ecosystems, and Long Island Sound is one of the bigger ones in the US. So because of that, in 1985, Congress established the Long Island Sound Study National Estuary Program. This is one of 28 national estuary programs across the nation. And the way that it operates is basically a partnership between EPA and several New York and Connecticut agencies and groups, including New York Sea Grant, as you see our logo there, as well as many universities and interested NGOs, interested individuals. And everything that we do is guided by this document called the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, or the CCMP. So the CCMP is divided into 4 main focuses. No need to dive into these, but this is just to give you an idea of how it operates. We have a focus on clean water and healthy watersheds. We have thriving habitats and abundant wildlife, sustainable and resilient communities, and sound science and inclusive management. And each of these themes is further broken down into outcomes and strategies and objectives and implementation actions. And these implementation actions are updated every so often. This is meant to be adaptive management. We just had an update to this document in 2020, specifically to the implementation actions. And it's meant to be a collaborative process between our stakeholders and our partners to decide what should be prioritized in the next 4 years or 5 years or whatever that term is. And importantly, across the whole CCMP, we do have some cross-cutting principles, which are long-term sustainability, climate resiliency, and environmental justice, which is why we are here today. So one last thing I do want to say about how Long Island Sound Study operates is, this is a kind of an intimidating diagram, but what I want to showcase here is that bottom row where it says committees and work groups. Essentially, you'll see that we operate via work groups and committees that get together with different specialists and folks interested in different topics and working within different fields. And you'll see how, in a way, they align with some of the focuses within the CCMP, right? So we have a water quality working group, we have embayment, watersheds and embayments working group, we have sustainable and resilient communities working group. And so the bottom line being that all or most of these work groups and committees get together quarterly, and their conversations about what's going on in the watershed and what each of them are doing and what needs to happen are what moves progress forward. So with that, I'm going to talk about the Environmental Justice Working Group within the Long Island Sound Study. This is a relatively new working group. It started with, just a handful of us in the summer of 2020, and we had started having conversations about what can we do to further environmental justice and DEIJ within each of our work plans and make sure it doesn't fall, to the wayside or anything. And eventually, what happened was that this work group was formalized by the management committee at the end of 2020, and we spent 2021 kind of having conversations amongst ourselves and with others who are doing similar work, and figuring out how to move forward. So our mission statement as a work group is to promote the incorporation and environmental justice of environmental justice into Long Island Sound Study decision-making and implementation of all CCMP goals. And to do that, we have a two-pronged strategy. The first one is more inward-facing, meaning, looking inward as a program, identifying what mechanisms we can work better on to improve accessibility, improving DEIJ literacy within partnership, and basically creating and fostering a safe space. And the second strategy is more engagement focused. It's about reaching out and fostering relationships with groups that we're currently not reaching, and making sure that we are effectively making space for them at the table, basically. And so under this strategy number 2 is where all this project falls under. So again, another intimidating diagram. I'm not going to dive into this. There's no need. This is the work group's 5-year work plan, but I put it here just to show right there, that second box under tasks, you'll see is the EJ needs assessment. So under that gray tasks area, the boxes that are that nice salmon color are the tasks that are part of the second strategy of having to do with kind of outreach and engagement and fostering relationships. And you'll see that on top of the EJ needs assessment, beginning in fiscal year 22, we had in there engagement starting with 3 to 5 areas per state. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But we started this effort, and the next piece is the EJ needs assessment. But all this to show that this project is very much still one of the very first steps that we are taking to begin this engagement process. And that's really the bottom line that I'm trying to highlight here. So I'll move over to the EJ needs assessment overview. The goal of the project is to better understand the needs and challenges faced by overburdened communities in New York and Connecticut portions of the Long Island Sound Watershed, and identify if, how, and where these needs and challenges overlap with Long Island Sound Study responsibilities as identified by the CCMP. So again, understanding what the needs and challenges are by overburdened communities in our region, and in doing so, identifying where that overlap is with the kind of work that we do according to our management plan, to see, what falls within what we can do and maybe what falls out of it right now that should be in there. So that's the main goal of the project. In doing that, another goal is to obviously help inform future environmental management programming and mechanisms, and especially this new EJ Small Grants program. I didn't point it out in the diagram, but it is in there. We have plans to create this smaller grants program to help improve capacity, to make things a little, make the application process a little easier. And the idea is that this needs assessment will help us shape what that program should look like. And finally, the goal, and another goal of this project is to serve, like I said, as one of the first steps in a greater hands-on community engagement effort to create and strengthen relationships with grassroots groups and communities across the watershed, become more familiar with their needs and challenges, and ultimately ensure that they are represented in local decision making. I did put a note in there that we will be working closely together on this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But again, the idea here is that we want to connect with communities, and this is one of the first steps that we're taking to do that. So we want to work closely with whatever the selected contractor is to be a part of this process. So in terms of the geographical scope, the Long Island Sound Watershed is massive. It's actually not covered in this map. It goes all the way up to almost Canada, the border with Canada. We as a program don't work that whole region. What we work with is the two hues of green there. It basically all of Connecticut and a portion of New York. And this is, the Connecticut and New York portions of the watershed. This is meant to be the main focus of this project. However, and this is one of the things that I do want to highlight and make sure that people understand. You'll notice, especially in Long Island, here in the bottom, right here, that the watershed border is actually relatively close to the shoreline, or to the coastline. And we know for a fact that there are groups of people, there are people that live maybe within 15, 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes of the sound and use it as their water body, but they're currently not, they don't fall within this watershed. So basically the watershed is, the watershed boundary is not defined by usage, but we do think that users of the sound should be a part of this study. And so as part of this proposal, we are expecting that potential bidders or contractors will propose how they will include those groups. So that's what I wanted to kind of underline here. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions about it later. So the main tasks of the EJ needs assessment are there in blue. We have conducting an exploratory phase of, what's going on in the region, maybe, scouring through news, or, we know what we're doing, but there's a lot going on and probably a lot we don't know. So just conducting an exploratory phase, designing the study methods, drafting the study questions, study implementation, data collection, EJ needs assessment, report, and presentations. Like I said, I'm not going to dive into these tasks in detail today in this webinar. They are detailed along with their deliverables in the RFP. And what I will say is that we did leave them kind of purposefully broad, because we want to hear from you, and we want to leave it to the experts to design a really an effective study. So I'm not diving into this today, but I am happy to answer specific questions about them if there are any questions at the end of the webinar. But so within the tasks that are outlined, applicants are encouraged to submit a study format that supports collaboration and learning from overburdened communities. So, again, the idea of this being kind of a dialogue, the idea of this being a collaborative approach to a needs assessment, that's what we would like to encourage. And the other thing is that it should be designed to be complementary and not duplicative to what we are already working on. So what are we working on? Or what do we have? I mentioned that as a work group, we've existed since the end of 2020. We have been busy, and there have been other things going on. So what we do have an EJ mapping tool based on data from EJ Screen from EPA. And it's specifically to the watershed. It's got the basic information found in EJ Screen, as well as the locations of some of our partners. I think we have some of the funded projects in there. So things like that. And these are all resources that will be available to the contractor if it's useful. We have a strategic communications plan that was just, or is in the process of being finalized right now. And in that process, there was a survey done to certain stakeholders, and we have those lists. There's also an informal needs assessment going on right now. It's focused around climate resiliency, but there is overlap in terms of some of the communities that we would be talking to. But this is an informal needs assessment. It's very much just extension associates heading out there and talking to folks, and not, they don't have a structured anything. It's just conversations to get an idea. And I should say those folks will be probably working very closely with us in this needs assessment process. And there is a public perception survey currently in the works. I believe the RFP is out right now. So that's part of what we've been up to, and a lot of those are resources that we can share with the contractor. Another thing that has been done already is we use some of those mapping tools to identify some potential initial EJ hotspots. So, and we have started some lists of potential contacts across different areas of the watershed. I think right now we have about 2 lists. So the contractor could, have access to that and help complete it. Basically, we're not working from zero, is what I'm saying. And finally, we have had some very initial engagement with some members of these communities. Right now, we're working, the outreach and extension staff within Long Island Sound Study have been coordinating with each other just to get an idea of who's working where and who's talking to who. We do this to try to make sure that we are not overburdening anybody and that we know what's going on. And of course, each of us is working, we have different focuses. Some of us are working on climate resiliency, some of us are working with subsistence fishing. Some of us are more focused on education, but the bottom line is that there is some initial engagement already, and by the time the contractor is selected, there will have been a little bit more. So again, we're not at zero, but it is still very much beginning. So coordination with the Long Island Sound Study core team. This core team is going to be a small team of maybe 4 of us or something like that, composed of outreach and extension staff within Long Island Sound Study. We'll have folks from New York and folks from Connecticut. Our hope is to be able to provide useful information to the contractor. We will provide feedback on all deliverables and help with shaping the project as appropriate. And importantly, we can help assist with coordinating any public-facing events, and we will be present and involved in those events. So again, I put those asterisks there in that comment at the bottom of the screen, because this is what I want to drive home. This is meant to be the beginning of us heading out there, starting to make connections. And what we really don't want to have happen is to have a contractor or have communities feel that there was a big group that sent in someone to bombard them with questions and then retreat and that's it. We want this to be a process where we get to know each other. We get to know the communities and they get to know us. We hear from them and they see us involved in the process, so that once the contractor is out of the picture, those relationships can remain and we can respond to each other and continue fostering these relationships. So basically, it depends on what the contractor decides to do with the project design, but if there is some kind of public facing anything, the expectation is that the contractor will coordinate with the core team to make sure that someone from Long Island Sound Study is there and present and involved to the best degree possible. And finally, the Long Island Sound Study core team will help with providing relevant resources. Some of those that I showed you in the previous slide, for example, will help when it comes time to coordinating presentations with certain work groups. We can help coordinate that. So it'll be working together on this. So we're almost at the end here. The application process is pretty straightforward. We're asking for a DEIJ statement and cover letter, which we're not defining what we mean by that. We'll leave it up to you. A project narrative as detailed as you can make it, budget broken out by tasks, documentation of qualifications, and 3 references of clients or partners. And again, there's more information on these in the RFP, so I'm not going to dive into it, but just to highlight that what we're looking for here is we are a lot of us are outreach folks, but we're also natural science people, and what we're searching for is someone who or a group who has this qualitative research background or social science research background, participatory action research background, that sort of thing. So that's what we're looking for in terms of qualifications and references. But we're, also if the contractor or the group is able to show that you have worked effectively with minority communities or overburdened communities, proving that there is expertise, that there is experience there, that is also very much appreciated. So all of this material should be submitted via the New York Sea Grant proposal portal. It's at that link there. It's also in the RFP. It's due 1 month from now, in August 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And they should be submitted here, not emailed to me or anybody. And this is the website, the Sea Grant website, and this is where the RFP is housed. You'll see there in the left-hand sidebar, you can find the RFP. And in the bottom there where it says apply now is where you would enter the portal and submit all of your materials. So that's it. That's 10:30 right on the dot. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm also happy to, if you don't have them right now and questions come up as you read the RFP, I'm happy to answer via email. And so if there are any questions, you can submit them in the chat, you can add them through the Q&A, and you can also raise your hand and I'm happy to unmute you and we can have a conversation. So any questions? Okay, so I see one here from Alex Rodriguez. In previous related surveys, what tools have you found to be helpful to organizations in conducting outreach? In previous related surveys, what tools have you found to be helpful to organizations in conducting outreach? That's a good question. I assume you're talking about the communications plan. That's the only survey that comes to mind that we've done recently. Well, honestly, I did not work on that survey. That was actually the contractor that we got for that. So I don't know that I can answer that. What tools have you found to be helpful to organizations in conducting research? Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what platform they use. Maybe they use Qualtrics. I know I have access to Qualtrics. When we've done evaluations, we've used SurveyMonkey. I don't know if that gets at what you're asking, but in terms of surveys, that's what we've done in the past. Any other questions? Again, you can put them in the chat, or you can write them in the Q&A. All right, so I'm seeing none. So in seeing none, I will conclude this webinar. But like I said, if there are any questions that come up as you are working through there we go. What is the range of funding? So it should be no more than 143,000. And something that I should say is that's the top, but obviously we're not going to be that the budget is not the only weight of how we will determine the selected contractor. But yeah, 143,000 is the top of the budget. Any other questions at this time? Do you have an estimated number of awards? I think I'm going to tap in Jean Ann for this question. Jean Ann, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have an answer for this? Could you put it in the chat? Okay, I'm not seeing a response from Jean Ann. Don't know what's going on. There we go. There we go. So what she's saying is we are awarding this to one vendor, but they could have subs. or subawards. Any other questions? All right, so now seeing none, oh wait. Okay, Gina and Ansel answered in the Q&A. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Again, you have my email. It's going to be posted on the website as well. If you have any questions in reading the RFP, you can email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So thank you so much, and I really look forward to hearing from you all. Have a great one.